of knowledge. It contains 5 halakhot. They are, in order, the laws which are the foundations of the Torah, the laws of personal development, the laws of Torah study, the laws governing the prohibition against the worship of stars and spiritual forces, and the statutes of the idolaters, the laws of teshuvah. The laws which are the foundations of the Torah, they contain 10 mitzvot, 6 positive commandments and 4 negative commandments. They are: 1. To know that there is a God. 2. Not to consider the thought that there is another divinity aside from God. 3. To unify him. 4. To love him. 5. To fear him. 6. To sanctify his name. 7. Not to profane God's name. 8. Not to destroy those things associated with his name. 9. To listen to a prophet who speaks in God's name. 10. Not to test God. The laws of personal development. They contain 11 mitzvot, 5 positive commandments, and 6 negative commandments. They are: 1. To emulate his ways. 2. To cling to those who know him. 3. To love one's fellow Jews. 4. To love the converts. 5. Not to hate one's Jewish brethren. 6. To rebuke. 7. Not to embarrass. 8. Not to oppress the unfortunate. 9. Not to gossip. 10. Not to take vengeance. 11. Not to bear a grudge. The laws of Torah study. They contain 2 mitzvot. 1. To study Torah. 2. To honor those who study it and know it. The laws of governing the prohibition against the worship of stars and the statutes of the idolaters. They contain 51 mitzvot, 2 positive commandments and 49 negative commandments. They are: 1. Not to show interest in the worship of false gods. 2. Not to stray after the thoughts of one's heart or the sights one's eyes behold. 3. Not to curse God. 4. Not to worship false gods with the types of service with which they are customarily served. 5. Not to bow down to false gods. 6. Not to make an idol for oneself. 7. Not to make an idol even for others. 8. Not to make images even for decoration. 9. Not to entice others to worship false gods. 10. To burn an apostate city. 11. Never to rebuild it. 12. Not to receive benefit from any of its property. 13. Not to persuade a single individual to worship false gods. 14. Not to love amiss it. 15. Not to reduce one's hatred for him. 16. Not to save his life. 17. Not to advance any arguments on his behalf. 18. Not to withhold information that will lead to his conviction. 19. Not to prophesy in the name of false gods. 20. Not to listen to anyone who prophesies in the name of false gods. 21. Not to give false prophecy even in the name of God. 22. Not to fear executing a false prophet. 23. Not to swear in the name of a false god. 24. Not to perform the deeds associated with an oath. 25. Not to perform the deeds associated with a yidoni. 26. Not to offer to Moloch. 27. Not to erect a pillar for purposes of worship. 28. Not to prostrate oneself on hewn stones. 29. Not to plant an Asherah. 30. To destroy false gods and all their objects of worship. 31. Not to benefit from false gods and all their objects of worship. 32. Not to benefit from ornaments that have adorned false gods. 33. Not to establish a covenant with nations who worship false gods. 34. Not to show them favor. 35. Not to allow them to settle in our land. 36. Not to follow their customs or manner of dress. 37. Not to act as a soothsayer. 38. Not to practice black magic. 39. Not to practice divination. 40. Not to cast spells. 41. Not to seek information from the dead. 42. Not to consult an oath. 43. Not to consult a yidoni. 44. Not to practice sorcery. 45. Not to shave the temples of our heads. 46. Not to shave off the corners of our beards. 47. For a man not to wear a woman's apparel. 48. For a woman not to wear a man's apparel. 49. Not to tattoo our bodies. 50. Not to make cuts in our flesh. 51. Not to tear out hair in mourning for the dead. The laws of teshuvah. They contain one mitzvah, that a sinner should repent before God from his sin and confess. Thus, this book contains a total of 75 mitzvot, 16 positive commandments and 59 negative commandments. A book of love. It contains 6 halachot. They are, in order, the laws of the recitation of the Shema, the laws of prayer and the priestly blessing, the laws of tefillin, mezuzot, and Torah scrolls, the laws of tzitzit, the laws of blessings, the laws of circumcision, the laws of the recitation of the Shema. They contain 1 positive commandment, to recite the Shema twice daily, the laws of prayer and the priestly blessing. The laws of tefillin, mezuzot, and Torah scrolls. They contain 5 positive commandments. They are: 1. To place tefillin on the head. 2. To tie them on the arm. 3. To affix a mezuzah at the entrance of our gateways. 4. For a man to write a Torah scroll for himself. 5. For a king to write a second Torah scroll for himself, so that he will have 2 Torah scrolls. The laws of tzitzit. They contain 1 positive commandment, to tie tzitzit to the fringes of our garments. The laws of blessings. They contain 1 positive commandment, to bless his name after eating. The laws of circumcision. They contain 1 positive commandment, to circumcise males on the 8th day. Thus, this book contains a total of 11 positive commandments. The Book of Seasons. It contains 10 halachot. They are, in order, the laws of the Sabbath, the laws of Eruvin, the laws of resting on the 10th day, Yom Kippur, the laws of resting on holidays, the laws of Hametz and Matzah, the laws of Shofar, Sukkah, and Lulav, the laws of the half shekel, the laws of the sanctification of the new month, the laws of fasts, the laws of the Megillah, and of Chanukah. The laws of the Sabbath. It contains 5 mitzvot, 2 positive commandments, and 3 negative commandments. They are: 1. To rest on the 7th day. 2. Not to do work on it. 3. For the court not to inflict punishment on the Sabbath. 4. Not to travel beyond the limits of one's place on the Sabbath. 5. To sanctify the day by remembering it. The laws of Eruvin. They contain 1 positive commandment, which is rabbinic in origin and is not included among the 613 commandments of the Torah. The laws of resting on the 10th day, Yom Kippur. They contain 4 mitzvot, 2 positive commandments and 2 negative commandments. 1. To rest on this day. 2. Not to do work on it. 3. To fast on this day. 4. Not to eat or drink on it. The laws of resting on holidays. They contain 12 mitzvot, 6 positive commandments and 6 negative commandments. They are: 1. To rest on the first day of Pesach. 2. Not to work on that day. 3. To rest on the 7th day of Pesach. 4. Not to work on that day. 5. To rest on the holiday of Shavuot. 6. Not to work on that day. 7. To rest on the first day of Rosh Hashanah. 8. Not to work on that day. 9. To rest on the first day of the festival of Sukkot. 10. Not to work on that day. 11. To rest on the 8th day of the festival of Sukkot. 12. Not to work on that day. The laws of Chametz and Matzah. It contain 8 mitzvot, 3 positive commandments and 5 negative commandments. They are: 1. Not to eat Hametz on the 14th of Nisan from noontime onwards. 2. To destroy leaven on the 14th of Nisan. 3. Not to eat Hametz for all 7 days of Pesach. 4. Not to eat a mixture containing Hametz for all these 7 days. 5. For Hametz not to be seen in one's possession for all these 7 days. 6. For Hametz not to be found in one's possession for all these 7 days. 7. To eat matzah on the night of Pesach. 8. To tell the story of the exodus from Egypt on that night. The laws of Shofar, Sukkah, and Lulav. They contain 3 positive commandments. They are: 1. To listen to the sounding of the shofar on the 1st of Tishri. 2. To dwell in a sukkah for the 7 days of that festival. 3. To take the lulav in the temple on all the 7 days of the festival. The laws of the half shekel. They contain 1 positive commandment for each man to give a half shekel each year. The laws of the sanctification of the new month. They contain 1 positive commandment to calculate, know, and appoint the day on which each of the months of the year begin. The laws of fasts. They contain 1 positive commandment to fast and call out before God at times of great communal distress. the laws of the Megillah and of Hanukkah. They contain two positive commandments, which are rabbinic in origin and are not included among the 613 commandments of the Torah. Thus, this book contains a total of 35 of the Torah's commandments, 19 positive commandments, and 16 negative commandments. It also contains 3 commandments, which are rabbinic in origin. The Book of Women. It contains 5 halachot. They are in order: the laws of marriage, the laws of divorce, the laws of yibum and chalitza, the laws pertaining to a virgin maiden, the laws pertaining to a sota, the laws of marriage. It contained 4 mitzvot, 2 positive commandments and 2 negative commandments. They are: 1, to marry a woman with a marriage contract and a marriage ceremony; 2, not to engage in sexual relations with a woman without a marriage contract and a marriage ceremony; 3, not to withhold living expenses, clothing, and conjugal rights from one's wife; 4, to be fruitful and multiply with her. The laws of divorce. They contain 2 mitzvot. 1, a positive commandment, for a man to divorce his wife with a get. 2, for a man who divorces his wife not to remarry her after she has married another person. The laws of yibum and chalitza. They contain 3 mitzvot, 2 positive commandments and 1 negative commandment. They are: 1, to perform yibum; 2, to perform chalitza; 3, for a yevamah not to marry another person until she is absolved of her obligation to the yevam. The laws pertaining to a virgin maiden. They contain 5 mitzvot, 3 positive commandments and 2 negative commandments. They are: 1, to find one who seduces a woman; 2, for a rapist to marry the woman he rapes; 3, for a rapist never to divorce his wife; 4, for a woman whose husband made defamatory remarks about her to remain married to him forever; 5, for a husband who made defamatory remarks about his wife never to divorce her. The laws pertaining to a sota. They contain 3 mitzvot, 1 positive commandment and 2 negative commandments. They are: 1, to perform the ritual associated with the testing of a sota, a woman who aroused her husband's jealousy, as prescribed by the Torah; 2, not to place oil on her sacrifice; 3, not to place frankincense on her sacrifice. Thus, this book contains a total of 17 of the Torah's commandments, 9 positive commandments, and 8 negative commandments. Sefer Kedusha. It contains 3 halachot. They are, in order: the laws of forbidden intimate relations, the laws of forbidden foods, the laws of ritual slaughter. The laws of forbidden intimate relations. They contain 37 mitzvot, 1 positive commandment, the remainder being negative commandments. They are: 1, not to have intimate relations with one's mother; 2, not to have intimate relations with one's father's wife; 3, not to have intimate relations with one's sister; 4, not to have intimate relations with one's father's wife's daughter; 5, not to have intimate relations with one's son's daughter; 6, not to have intimate relations with one's daughter; 7, not to have intimate relations with one's daughter's daughter; 8, not to marry a woman and her daughter; 9, not to marry a woman and her son's daughter; 10, not to marry a woman and her daughter's daughter; 11, not to have intimate relations with one's father's sister; 12, not to have intimate relations with one's mother's sister; 13, not to have intimate relations with one's father's brother's wife; 14, not to have intimate relations with one's son's wife; 15, not to have intimate relations with one's brother's wife; 16, not to have intimate relations with one's wife's sister; 17, not to have intimate relations with an animal; 18, for a woman not to have intimate relations with an animal; 19, for a man not to have intimate relations with another man; 20, not to have intimate relations with one's father; 21, not to have intimate relations with one's father's brother; 22, not to have intimate relations with a married woman; 23, not to have intimate relations with a woman in the niddah state; 24, not to marry a Gentile; 25, for an Ammonite convert or a Moabite convert not to marry among the Jewish people; 26. Not to prevent a third-generation Egyptian convert from marrying among the Jewish people. 27. Not to prevent a third-generation Edomite convert from marrying among the Jewish people. 28. Not to allow a mamzer to marry among the Jewish people. 29. Not to allow a castrated man to marry among the Jewish people. 30. Not to castrate a male, even an animal, beast, or bird. 31. For a high priest not to marry a widow. 32. For a high priest not to have intimate relations with a widow, even outside the context of marriage. 33. A positive commandment for a high priest to marry a virgin maiden. 34. For a priest not to marry a divorcee. 35. For a priest not to marry an immoral woman, a zona. 36. For a priest not to marry a kalala. 37. For a man not to be intimate with a woman with whom sexual relations are forbidden, even when no sexual intimacy is involved. The laws of forbidden foods. They contain 28 mitzvot, 4 positive commandments, and 24 negative commandments. They are: 1. To check the signs which differentiate kosher animals and beasts from those which are not kosher. 2. To check the signs which differentiate kosher fowl from those which are not kosher. 3. To check the signs which differentiate kosher fish from those which are not kosher. 4. To check the signs which differentiate kosher locusts from those which are not kosher. 5. Not to eat non-kosher animals and beasts. 6. Not to eat non-kosher fowl. 7. Not to eat non-kosher fish. 8. Not to eat flying insects. 9. Not to eat insects that breed on land. 10. Not to eat anything that crawls on the earth. 11. Not to eat worms that breed in produce after they emerge on land. 12. Not to eat swarming creatures that breed in water. 13. Not to eat carrion. 14. Not to derive benefit from an ox that was executed by stoning. 15. Not to eat an animal with a mortal affliction, treifa. 16. Not to eat a limb from a living animal. 17. Not to consume blood. 18. Not to partake of the hard fat of a kosher animal. 19. Not to eat the displaced sciatic nerve. 20. Not to eat meat and milk together. 21. Not to cook them together. 22. Not to eat bread made from newly grown produce before Pesach. 23. Not to eat roasted grain from newly grown produce before Pesach. 24. Not to eat fresh grain from newly grown produce before Pesach. 25. Not to eat orla. 26. Not to eat mixed species planted in a vineyard. 27. Not to eat tevel. 28. Not to drink wine used for idolatrous libations. Feel free to go to part 3 of this video. Please share to spread the goodness.